We will acquaint you with a unique world, a world of fierce warriors and wonderful romantics, a mysterious and legendary world, a world of poets and government officials, a world of great empires and nomadic culture, a world of eternal blue sky, the Turkic world. The name Oguz may be referred to early days. In Chinese sources, relative to the 2nd century BC, Oghuz tribe was mentioned. At that time there was no name Turk. This is a Chinese version of the tribe's name, which is called Ogur in Turkic and formed like that because some Turkic tribes pronounce the letter Z like R. Tarbagatai and Kobdo areas, indicated in Chinese sources as Oghuz settlements, were Turkic territory, as known. The name Oguz comes from the word ok, arrow. Ok in Turkic language also means tribe. Back in those days, this word was translated into Chinese as tribe. For example, on Oki equals 10 tribes. According to this word, Oguz is formed by connection the letter Z to Ok. In Old Turkic language, the letter Z was ending of plural, and not being ethnic name, directly meant Turkic tribes.
Впервые слово «тюрк» упоминается в надписях, найденных в долине.
The name Oguz was first used in the first inscription found in the embankment of Barlik River, which flows into the Yenisei. It was written, 6 Oguz tribes. It meant 6 tribes united into one tribe. Judging by the fact that these inscriptions dedicated to bees, it's worth thinking that Oguzes in ancient times existed in this valley, having formed a union. Orkhon inscriptions do not make a distinction between Oguz and Gök Turks. Moreover, Oguzes formed the basis of the Khanate.
Особого разделения между ними нет. Как раз об этом и говорят китайские источники.
Meanwhile, virtually throughout the half-century history of the Second Eastern Turkic Khaganate, according to runic memorials, the ruling clan Turks had to fight with Oguzes, and for that matter with many other Turkic tribes and peoples. Actually, the short history of the Second Eastern Turkic Khaganate began from Ilturis's violent actions to unite Turkic tribes and peoples. In 682, when Ilturish and his advisor and associate Tunukuk led the movement for reconstruction of Khaganate, Oguzes consisting of 9 tribes, Dokuz Oguz, lived on the bank of Tola River. Bas Kagan was their leader. Oguzes reacted so negatively to the possibility of recreating Khaganate and subordination to Turkic ruling clan that they decided to destroy this clan until it had time to gain force. In order to realize this plan, they formed an alliance with Chinese and Khitais. Tunukuk describes this episode in ancient Turkic history. A spy, defector, came from Oguzes. He said that the Khagan sat on the throne of the Oguz people. He sent Kuni Sungun to Chinese and Tongur Semik to Khitais. The ambassadors passed the following words of Khagan. The little Turkic people began to move. Khagan Turk is brave, his advisor is learned. If at least 2 people remain of them, Turks, they will kill you, Chinese. In the east they will kill Khitais and us, Oguzes. That's why let Chinese attack from the south, Kittites from the east, and I will attack from the north. Thanks to measures taken by Turkic, Turks were able to preempt creation of the coalition and to go forth first. They made an attack to Oguzes. In the bloody battle on the bank of Tola River, Oguzes were defeated. However, they did not submit. Ilturish Kagan and Turkic made another 4 campaigns against Oguzes. During one of them, Bas Kagan was killed. Only then Oguzes submitted to Ilturish and entered the Khaganate. We, Ilturish Kagan and I, wise Turkic, won. Kapagan multiplied combined Turkic people. The wise Turkic Kagan rules well the united Turkic people. Oguznamen.
Oguzes были это тюркские племена. Правда,
Oguzes, Turkic tribes. To tell the truth, Oguz Confederation was formed in the long struggle with Yenisei, East Turkestan, Semirechye, lower reaches of the Sirdarya and Amudarya rivers. It is interesting that many legends and myths related to Oguzes are directly connected with the history of Hans. Some historians believe that the legend of the poem about Oguz Kagan is direct glorifying of Modeh Shanyu. And many parallels really confirm that there are a lot of similarities in glorifying and historical facts about Hans.
В воспевании и в исторических фактах, связанные с Хунну.
The Oguzes people was my own people. Memorial to Bilge Kagan. Members of Oguz Union in large quantities moved from Arkon area first to surrounding area of Talas River and then to the Sirdarya. Taking into account the fact that in the 11th century the language of Sirdarya Oguzes differed from the language of Eastern Turks with words and pronunciation, it is assumed that this migration took place before the 9th century. In Mahmud Kashgari's dictionary, there is information about settlement of Oguzes along with other Turkic tribes in Jetesu, between Lake Isyk-Kul and Chu River.
Огузы населяли вот этот благословенный край, Жетсу. Казахи говорят...
Oguzes inhabited this blessed land, Jetesu. Kazakhs say, earthly paradise Jetesu. In the old days, Oguzes settled Jetesu, and they were not persecuted. They moved to the west, developing new territory and capturing a new state.
Осваивая новые территории, захватывая новые государства.
Only after strengthening of Karluks, Oguzes repressed by them moved to the area near the Sirdarya. In the first half of the 10th century, Oguzes lived in the steppes of the Sirdarya, in towns Karajuk, Farab and Sayram, located in its surrounding area. According to Islamic geographers Al-Balhi, Istahri, Ibn Hafkal and Hudulul Alem, Oguz territory extended to the Caspian Sea in the west. So a peninsula in the east of the sea took the Turkic name Mankishlak, to Gurgench town in the south, to Jit and Baratikin villages within its northwest, in the south of Aral Lake, to the north of Bukhara in Mawarana, to Sagran town at the foot of Karajuk Mountains, and half of the steppe from the Caspian Sea to Karajuk Mountains was called Oguz Steppe. Mafazul Guziya. In the first half of the 10th century, Oguzes founded a new state with a summer center in Yeniken town. Yabgu was their head. The leader with the rank of Yurkin was his deputy. Subashi led the army. There was evidence of hostile relations between Yabgu state and its neighbors, Pechenegs and Khazars. According to Ibn Fadlan, first quarter of the 10th century, and El Mesudi, there were wars between them frequently. Afriga, the local dynasty of Khorazm, was oppressed by Oguzes. About fight between Oguzes and their eastern neighbors, Seljuks, it became known after Oguz Yabgu's death in one of the wars with them. On the other hand, Mahmud Kashgari talked about constant enmity between Oguzes and Chigils. Relations with Kimaks who lived in the north were sometimes friendly, sometimes hostile. These Oguzes, on a par with the general name Turk, also used the name Turkmen as a political one. Oguz governor Jabgu's wives took part in government of the state. They had the title of Khatun. Oguz state was based on a military democracy. For this reason, military commanders called Subashi played an important role in Oguz society. Jabgu conferred with Subashi, and in most cases he considered their opinions. Jabgu also had official advisors, so-called Call Your Kins. Oguz's public gathering was convoked once a year. Due to strengthening influence of the feudal aristocracy instead of the public gathering, Call Your Kins began to convoke nobles' council called Kankash. With the rise of Oguz society, supreme governance authority belonged to the great and the small Kurultais. Epic chronicle Oguz Name, 13th century, is the evidence of that. It states, Oguz Kagan convoked the great Kurultai. On the great Kurultai Kagan seated his sons on the right side of him. That was called Boz Ok, literally white arrow. On the left side, nobles and leaders, Ush Ok, 3 arrows. When electing Kagan, advantage was on the side of the white arrow.
Интересен состав огузского государства, племенной состав. Обычно
The composition of Oguz state was special. It consisted of the tribes. Typically, as in Hans, it consisted of 24 clans. It was mainly divided into 2 fatries, Uchkok and Bozok. The main fatry was considered Bozok, which was in turn also divided into 2 equal wings. Sources reported about main tribes of Oguz Confederation. There we see 2 Geshes, Seljuks, and those tribes that were part of Kimak Khaganate. What does it mean? That Oguzes were nomadizing occupied territories in the middle reaches of the Sirdarya, the Caspian Sea, right up to the Volga, and its eastern part touched Kimak Khaganate. That is, all the tribes were mixed with each other. And it is one more confirmation that Turkic tribes related to one another. We find this tribal composition in Kimak Khaganate and in part of Oguz Khaganate.
Практически родственные друг другу, так как мы находим эти состав племен и как при Кимакском Каганате, так и в составе Огузского Каганата.
He conquered lands from Talas and Sairam to Mawarana, Bukhara and Khorazm and began to rule them. Oguz Name. Oguzes were divided into 3 main groups of tribes and clans called Boy, Oba and Kok, and they in turn were divided into Uruks and Aymaks. tribal and family clans communities were Uruks. According to Oguzname, Jabgu divided his possessions into 12 aymaks. Oguz rulers were elected from the most powerful Khan Uruks, tribal clans. Privilege for power by the elder kinsman over the younger one was at the heart of election. Rise of Oguz state began during the reign of Khan Ali's heir Shah Malik. In 1041, he conquered Khwarezm. Repeated attack of Seljuks led to defeat of Oguzes. Shah Malik himself died near Khwarezm. Discord and strife in struggle for power began in Oguz state. Discord and strife in struggle for power began in Oguz state. Their eastern neighbors, Kipchak tribes, took advantage of this situation. Oguz state fell under their attack. In the 11th century, Kipchaks finally forced out Oguzes from the banks of the Sirdarya and the Aral Sea. At the beginning of the 11th century, Oguz state ceased to exist. In the 9th-10th centuries, Oguzes were a conglomerate of Turkic-speaking tribes that lived in Central Asia. Since the end of the 10th century, the name Turkmen was often applied to them. Probably Oguzes who converted to Islam were called Turkmens. Later, they took the most active part in formation of modern ethnic Turks, Azerbaijanis and Turkmen. In the middle of the 10th century, Seljuks clan, descendants of Kynık tribe, began to stand out from Oguzes. Having united a part of Oguz tribes under their power and having accepted Islam, Seljuks moved to Mawarana and Khwarezm and then to Khorasan. In 1038, Seljuks, headed by Togril, defeated Ghazvani's troops and took Khorasan from them. Subsequently, Seljuk armies conquered vast territories subjugating Iran, Iraq, Transcaucasus, Syria and almost the whole Asia Minor. Having captured Baghdad in 1055, they put Abbasid Caliph under their control.
Ну а каким образом вот это небольшое племя, огузское племя, оно увлекало за собой и другие племена? Вот.
Thus, a small Oguz tribe carried other tribes with them. Where fighting needed, they helped to conquer lands. But Oguzes came for the first time to the territory of modern Turkey, that is, the territory of Byzantium. They settled this land. At that time, there were no borders, as nowadays. Turkic tribes came, settled, made friends with local population, and so on. And then a big wave from the east gradually occupied Asia Minor Peninsula. They created a principality. In 1206, the first state formation arose in Turkic territory. Oguzes did it.
Создавались княжества. В 1206 году возникло первое государственное образование тюркское на этой территории. Это сделали огузы.
About how Oguz Il began feud with Ali Khan. About how Shah Malik was killed. How riot began. And how Il was scattered to the four winds. Abul Ghazi, Turkmen's genealogy. As Oguzes guarded their territory against Kipchaks for 4 centuries, in the 11th century they had to give it under the pressure of a new power, going from the east, from Mongolia. By the time Genghis Khan arrived in the banks of the Sirdarya, Oguzes had already scattered in Iran, Azerbaijan and Anatolia. From their ranks to power exalted tribe Kinnik, that later became Seljuk dynasty, from which in turn 23 other Oguz tribes were formed. By the time of creation of Dede Korkut first version, protection of the old homeland on Sirdarya River began to be forgotten and acquired an aura of a legend. It was a favorite subject of Turkic minstrel songs.
Главными врагами агузов в начале XI века с севера были кыпчаки.
In the 11th century, Kipchaks were the main enemies of Oguzes in the north. The Golden Horde ancestors were undoubtedly disbelievers. With him, epic heroes continually fought.
Народы.
That time, Kipchaks practiced shamanism, which was popular among Turkic, Tatar and Mongol peoples. For the first time, Oguz tribes themselves got acquainted with Islam in the 10th century as a result of trade relations with Muslims from lands behind the Amudarya. By the end of the 11th century, most of Oguzes accepted Islam, at least superficially, and became defenders of the new religion. In earlier versions, the Dede Korkut epic almost certainly contained a description of Kipchaks and deeds of their leaders. In the version of the 16th century, Kipchaks were almost not mentioned.
Говорилось очень часто о стычках, войнах и так далее, и так далее. В более поздних версиях, уже в XVI веке, о кыпчаках не говорилось ни слова.
Numerous earlier historical works on Middle East and Central Asia mentioned characters and events that occurred in Dede Korkut and testify to historicity of certain parts of the epic.
Ясно, что Коркут жил в свое время.
Korkut Tatar, grandfather, lived in the Sirdarya steppes at one time. There is a well-known legend, it is particularly close to Kazakhs, how Korkut was engaged in searching the promised land or eternal life. That is, he looked for eternal life. He tried to cheat death. This is similar to interesting stories of Kazakh mythology, epics, heroic epics. And surprisingly, Kazakh folk instrument kobыз, according to the legend, originated from Korkut Tatar.
Народный национальный инструмент казахов кобыз, вот как раз по легенде берет свое начало от Коркута.
A year later, the child, like a prophetess, Jesus, opened his mouth and said, I was born in the royal tent, Bargah, so I must have the name Oguz. Oguz Name. Oguz state played an important role in the political and military history of Eurasia. In 965, in alliance with Kiev and Rus, they defeated Kazakh Khaganate, which eastern border reached the northeastern coast of the Caspian Sea in the middle of the 10th century. In 985, Oguz Jabgu with Russian princes inflicted a major defeat to Volga, Bulgaria. All these contributed to growth of political power of Oguz Empire. In the first quarter of the 10th century, Oguz state collapsed from a strong blow delivered by Polovtsi from the northeast. After the defeat, Oguzes had to leave their native vast expanses. Some of them, under the common name Turks, moved west and settled in the steppes of southern Rus. Another part moved southwest through Mavorana. These Oguz tribes, known as Seljuks, after their leader and founder of Seljuks dynasty, gradually began to conquer countries of Western Asia, one after another. But about that we'll tell you in the next series of our program.